Welcome to Harrisburg. We're happy that you come and join us for this celebration. So I wanted to say, what do you think about the space that we're in?
Yeah.
Right? It's great. It's like the most eclectic place I've ever been to. And I just want to point out that a lot of these things that are around here are one of a kind, so just be really careful with all of his things. So the man's name is Dale, who owns this place, and it's great. He's really working with us. He said, you know, there's a limit to how many people can stay overnight, but they're letting us have as many people as we want to in the daytime so that we could actually hold our meetings here too. So it's great. What a year we've had this year, right? Exciting, demanding, frustrating, destructive, triumphant, right? When the League of Women Voters pulled out of the debates, did you not feel kind of triumphant? That was from our emails and our letters to them. Okay, so that was pretty cool. And then hopeful, and then disappointing a little bit in the end. But tomorrow we're going to have a debriefing in the morning before we start everything else. We're going to talk about things that went great, because we did. We ran awesome campaigns this year, guys. And then opportunities that we have to do even better next year and the year after. And just kind of talk all of that stuff through so that we feel a little bit better. So today, we're celebrating, this is our day for celebrating. We're celebrating our teamwork, our dedication, our successes. So, no frustration today, okay? We're celebrating. After we hear from our keynote speaker, we're going to learn from each other at our workshops that were developed by our teams and our members. This is totally about our teams and the work that we do and the coordination that we have. And we have done really awesome with that this year, guys. You have a lot to be proud of. Following dinner, we'll be screening the movie Unfractured. We actually have to apply to be able to do that, and you can read a little bit more about that in your program. It's about a mother's journey into activism, and from what I've heard, it's really, really good. It's about her journey in activism against fracking. And then after that, we have another movie, and it's Flesh and Blood, and I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it is about Sherry Hunkola. And it actually has her in it, and her son. And I think he wrote it. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's a fact and fiction.
It was?
It's a blend of fact and fiction.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool though. That's one of our own. And there's a little bit more about that in the program too. Okay, so now I am thrilled to introduce Steve Grumbine as our keynote speaker for today. He is the founder of Real Progressives, and that is a progressive activist group, in case you haven't heard of it, with a reach of over 120,000 followers. So they have really grown. I'm sure we have a lot we can learn from him. So let's give him a warm welcome, everybody.
So I can't tell you how grateful I am to have been asked by Tim. Thank you all very much for having me. This is as much a learning experience for me as it is for anybody else. How many of y'all have ever heard of Real Progressives? Good. All right, I feel better. So, years ago, Real Progressives was started as an answer to kind of like a tongue-in-cheek poke back to Real Democrats. You know, during the Bernie era, we were all marginalized. You know, we were all treated as other. You guys are familiar with that. You're Greens, right? So they had put us off to the pasture as well. And you know, the saying was, "What are you going to do? Vote? You're going to vote for Hillary?" You know, of course, it's like, I don't think anybody considered what it would be like to not vote for Hillary, because at the time that was the only, was it the only choice or whatever? There is no other alternative kind of thing. And I think, remember the very first time that some of us let it roll off our tongue, never Hillary. And it was like, really, I know this is probably something that many in this room would never even have considered. But as most of us were Democrats at the time, It was really difficult to say those words, that we were going to actually do this unthinkable thing. But we didn't come to start Real Progressives as really a response to Hillary, so much as we did it to support Bernie Sanders' economic advisor, Stephanie Kelton. Now, I assure you, I'm not here to talk about economics, although that is my favorite subject in the world. But it is an important factor of what makes us us. Like the Greens, you're fighting an uphill battle against entrenched beliefs, against tribalism, against old structures and so forth. Well, we're fighting against a different orthodoxy, and that's economic orthodoxy. So we have very, very, very similar paths we're walking. And it's what makes me endeared to Greens so much, is the fact that you know struggle, and you know what it's like to be other. You know what it's like to be on the outside looking in. And I think that it's very important to understand that as we're in that otherness, you guys have been other for a lot longer than Real Progressives. We've only been around, a little over 3 years, almost 4 years now. You guys have been around for a long time. You guys have a long history of suffering and fighting and trying to endure when hope seems to be snatched away. And they're always there to kind of make sure you know there's no hope in what you're doing. It's stupid. Why are you doing that? It's just stupid. And you can internalize that, and you can begin to own their view of the world. Or you can take a stand, and you can lift your chin up with confidence to know that you're fighting for something that's really important. And so, as Real Progressives, that's what we're doing. And that's what I've chosen to talk about with you all today, is being able to fight through that otherness as both an alternative media organization, as a group trying to organize people who can sometimes be swept away in that otherness and feel defeated before they get started, and the challenges that we all seem to face in this shared struggle. And it is a shared struggle. We may not be green specific, but we are not anti-green. We are green inclusive. We're nonpartisan. We are a movement builder. That's our goal, is to build a movement. And it has been to support a Green New Deal. Before Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came out, which crops, let's give props where props are due, right? This is all about movement building. The 99% includes Republicans too. I don't know if people realize that. So we got to take our wins where we can get them and accept allies when they show themselves. And I think that that's the hardest thing, because as you're building a brand, as you're building an identity, and you're trying to create this rationale for why should I struggle with you? What makes your struggle worth joining? Why should I struggle with you? It's that brand identity, it's that self that makes it something that you can retreat back to, that core set of values that says, this is what I am, this is who I am, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And, so for Real Progressives, we came up with a grid. It looks like a tic-tac-toe grid almost. We have 4 pillars. They're not the same kind of 4 pillars you guys have. We chose them as more like verticals for a business structure. So we have policy, we have education, we have activism, and we have media. And those are the 4 ways we're attacking the problem through those means. Then we have 7 knowledge areas that traverse those 4 pillars. It starts with economic justice, because naturally we're modern monetary theory through and through. But then every aspect of what economic justice looks like. What does economic justice look like? Neil, what does economic justice look like? It's not really answers, it's things to think about. And as you process that, you start seeing that that's just the tip of the spear, that top umbrella, and then you can slice that a million different ways to address all the concerns that we have. The next one is environmental and ecological justice. What does that mean? Think about Brazil right now. My God, what did they just do? I mean, they just sat there and put a fascist there that's going to sell out the rainforest. This is a big deal, right? This is a big deal. And then you've got equality with justice. It's one thing to be equal, but if we're all standing on a box and the fence is still over here on the short guy, he still can't see the field, right? So equality with justice means that we get everybody level at the top too. It's not just that we're standing on equal footing, you know? And then we have peace with justice. And I think peace without justice isn't peace at all, right? So we add the with justice because I think that people mistakenly think that we're not fist fighting, so therefore there's peace in the world. And it's not necessarily true. There's all forms of violence. In fact, on my way here, I stopped to take a picture of what would have been a benign, typical, you know, central Pennsylvania type sign. And what it said was, if you can read this, thank a teacher. Since you read it in English, thank a veteran. Oof. No joke. And I sat there and I just like almost threw up, and I stopped and I said, nah, I'm turning around and I'm taking a picture of this thing because I want to show folks this is real. This is happening right here, right now. This didn't go away in 1947 or, you know, this didn't go away with segregation. This is still in existence today, and this is the way they view it. And instead of fighting forest fires out in California, we're sending troops down to the border to block refugees. We got some problems here, right? This is not peace. This is not peace with justice. And then we have democracy, folks. This is where we all align so closely, right? Democracy means so many things. We want to expand democracy. We want to make voting fair. But what about opening up the debates? What about providing coverage to alternative viewpoints? What about somehow or another getting rid of this first past the post mindset? How do we build coalitions? How do we enable other voices? I think that, you know, that Boolean logic of either or is a false paradigm that neoliberalism thrives in, but our nation was built on, unfortunately. So I think that it's very, very important that we focus on building democracy into every aspect of our lives, from our sitcoms. My God, you remember Roseanne was on for like 3 episodes not too long ago as we came back out of the blue? The first thing you do is you have a fight between sisters about paying for Medicare. And of course, Roseanne gets her punch in there of, how are you going to pay for it, right? Other people's money, blah, 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 kind of nonsense, laughs at it. This is the pervasive nature of neoliberalism. It hits into our day, the sitcoms we watch, soap operas, the newspapers, every aspect of our lives is covered with this. So this pernicious stranglehold that it has on us blocks our imagination. Anyway, the next one is health and well-being. I think we all can kind of get behind that too. We all understand that there's a lot of things that we're doing that create a really bad environment. So that's the 6th knowledge area. And the last one is technology and innovation. How do we deal with innovation as it comes up? How do we deal with society as productivity is pushed in different directions? And how do we adjust for that? Do we have a federal job guarantee? Do we implement an expanded basic income, social security, expand, whatever? How do we deal with these things? So these are the 7 knowledge areas of real progressives. And you can clearly see, I believe, based on what I know of the Green Party, that we have very, very similar goals. We have very, very similar adjacent, if not overlapping, values. So trying to explain this to people, trying to get them on board, and trying to penetrate that thick outer shell that is defeated before it gets started is a real challenge. And so with real progressives, we're fighting with Facebook. We're fighting with algorithms that block us from getting our message out. We're fighting with trolls that try to disperse our message and make us fight about petty nonsense and get us spun up around the axle about nothing. We're dealing with partisans that won't have a legitimate conversation about the actual issue. What if I told you I was a Republican, but I supported Medicare for all? What if I told you I was a Republican, I supported a National Health Service? What if I told you I was a Republican and I wanted to get rid of the military? I don't know, I'm just coming up with things, right? But what if it's this party thing, you immediately hear, well, you're not a Green, so you don't have a say-so here. You're not a Democrat, you don't have a say-so here. And I think that the conversations, social media, are really important to have because you don't know who's watching. It's not the person you're engaging with. It's the 10 other people that are surrounding them that are reading your exchange. And when they see, for example, a Green say something horrible about X candidate, that hurts the Greens. It doesn't help them, it hurts them. And the same thing with Democrats when they're sitting there running around yapping about the Greens cost us the election data, or blah, 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 whatever, all these bullshit things that they've done over the years. It just makes them look like idiots. There's no conversation about why does the Green Party even exist? Why does it exist? It exists because the Democratic Party hasn't done its job. It isn't the left party at all. You know what I'm saying? So people need to have those conversations. And I think that part of what we as real progressives do is our intent by being completely nonpartisan is to engage the full breadth of that 99%. Is to get our shared values out there. Because once you stop putting the colors up for a minute, people hear what you're saying. I think a lot of people, they don't even need to know what you're saying. Well, I'm never voting for a Democrat. Democrats can go to hell. They, blah, blah, blah. And you see the conversation ended right there. Anything else you say beyond that is done. There's literally nothing coming from that conversation anymore. So I did a live stream not too long ago about the 12 years that the IPCC talked about us mitigating. We're no longer fixing, we're mitigating now the effects of global climate change and the effects of our irresponsible use of fossil fuels and other things like that. And I talked about this timeline. I'm a project manager by trade. And so you look at this, it's 12 years. What do we have to do in that 12 years to make it so that we have a future to hand over to our children? The planet will be here. It's not going anywhere. We might not be on it though. So within that, what do we do? And when you structure it out and you look at that, you realize that the average person, they're not even hearing that. All they're hearing is, oh, it's a farce. There's no such thing as climate change, or oh, it normally happens, or vice versa. Oh my God, we're all going to die. They don't. How do we get there? How do we get the cheese? We're in the maze. How do we get to the cheese? You remember that from, I don't even remember what the movie is. I can see John Favreau saying, I think it was Couples Retreat. But the idea here is that we don't talk to one another. And so as part of this organizing thing, Real Progressives has been looking to build chapters and complementary chapters to work hand in hand with groups like the Greens, like even any of them, anyone that will listen, anybody that will listen. I walk into a Republican stronghold and I will shake hands with anybody that will listen to me. Just listen to me. I don't have to agree with you on everything. If I can budge you an inch, you've made my life, you've made our chances of survival that much better. We got 12 years. So as we walk through this maze together, I keep thinking to myself, how is it that we can overcome our structural differences while still building and retaining our identities, while growing our base with what we want to do, our specific things, and at the same time changing the dialogue and changing the way that we communicate to one another. I think this is a really big deal. And I can tell you right now, I have a problem with this myself. I have allowed, because I work 24/7 by 365 at this thing, it consumes me. It consumes me. And when people push back, my skin has gotten so thin that like you can just see my nerve endings. It's just that. That's not good. You need balance, right? We all need balance. But in this volunteer world, people come, people go. People have different ideas, they have egos, they have pride, they have desires. And I'm one of these guys that, like I was saying earlier, that I can tunnel vision my way to the end game and all the noise just dissipates. When I'm focused, don't get in my way. I see where we need to be. But everybody wants to say, but let's talk about racism, Steve. Come on over here, let's talk about racism. I'm like, but the fix to racism's over here, guys. It's economic justice. You don't realize that's how Hitler rose to power, guys. But you want to talk about Hitler, so let's talk about Hitler. But guys, we're further away now than we were before. So you keep pulling me different directions, and the reality is that once we uncork root causes, and we can get to the point where we agree on what root causes are, and not be hyperbolic, God. doesn't that annoy you? Doesn't that get to a point where you just tune it out and you just say, what am I doing here? I'm wasting time. I could be bouncing my kid on my knee in the final hours of our existence, right? If I'm going to go out, I'm not going to waste it being hyperbolic. You know, so I want to make sure that we, as a movement, and I call us a movement, that's how I'm viewing this family of people that are about the same issues. How do we keep focused and build and build and build? And I think what you've got here is a situation where party identity is very important. Retain it, organize in it, do what you've got to do in it, but remain open. Don't become so closed that you repel people. Don't become so closed that you can't accept an ally where they stand. Their circumstances are different than yours, and I don't know what they are, and you don't either. Just like I don't know what yours are. And I think that it's very important because Jill had a real opportunity, didn't she? She had a real opportunity to pull the burners in right there. I think she did everything but she rolled out the green carpet, right? But it didn't happen. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. Whether it be Bernie went back into the Democratic Party, whether it be whatever, it didn't happen. That unification didn't happen. We balkanized, we shrunk back, we went to our own little corners, and now we're further away from unifying. And I say unifying, I'm not talking about party unification, I'm talking about cause unification. So I'm hoping that as part of Real Progressives, that I can be a good partner to the Green Party, where we agree, that we can find ways to work together, that you all can find ways to overcome all the deviations that pull you this way and that way and stay focused on the prize. We got 12 years. 12 years to get this shit right. And if you're chasing every shiny object, if you're chasing every bumper sticker, every tweet, every headline, everything that irritates you, we don't have time for it. We just don't have time for it. So my hope is that I will see this. I'm very proud of the Green Party of Pennsylvania. First of all, there was a push to get me to run for office, and I really wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it. It wasn't possible. My job basically told me, sure, you can do it, but you probably won't have a job after this. And I have a child with special needs, so that's my special need. And so I had to say no. But you look at this and it's like, I wanted to do this. I wanted to be a part of this thing, you know? And I think that you all need to realize that that attraction to being a part of something special, you've got to remain soft and open to allowing otherness from others too. And let's be fair, when you're used to being beaten up, put down, treated as an outcast on the outside, you know, it can make you feel good, it can make you feel tough, and make you feel like you're in your own little world, but a crazy band of 1% isn't going to win this war. We need the other 98, you know? And so I guess my closing here is that I'd like you all to realize that we are indeed a friend to you all. And if you ever hear me fighting with David Cobb or Howard Schweitzer or whatever, it's because they deserve it. I'm fighting with them for a good cause. I'm not fighting with them because I just don't want the Greens, right? Don't let anybody ever tell you that. That's not true. I'm fighting because I have invested an incredible amount of effort and energy into a global movement, which Real Progressives is a part of, with modern monetary theory. Stephanie Kelton is down there right now in Australia with the Get Up movement, and they're pushing for a federal job guarantee. This is a global movement, my friends. We've got folks all over the world that are working this. And it's really exciting, it's really powerful, but you gotta talk about what you're for and not just what you're against. Stay in the victory, stay in the win. Do not let them lower your head down. You keep your chin up. And remember, you're fighting for something, not just against something.
I don't have a question, but something's been on my mind this morning. I read I have a small local newspaper in E-Town, that I've subscribed to, and they did an article on the high school had their own paper, but the Econ paper recycled it. And they interviewed students there, and there was one girl, she's 12-year-old. They asked, what do you think about the midterm elections? Her response, kind of paraphrasing, but down at the bottom said, I'm glad that Democrats won, but it won't change the results of the 2020 election. Trump will still win, and nobody will do anything for us. And that struck me so hard, because this 12-year-old girl, 12, can you see it so clearly? And she's laying it out right there. She doesn't think that the two power parties are doing anything for her. It doesn't matter. And it got me thinking about what we're doing here today, what we've done in the past. What Real Progressives is doing is finding a way to get important messages out there.
Yes.
Here's a 12-year-old girl, and she's, in my opinion, she's never going to vote. She just gave up. So I love what Real Progressives does, because you guys get out there and you try to encourage and activate people, turn them on, and get them involved. What kind of challenges do you see with that? Is the crowd that invests time with you? Do you see that in the younger generation? Are they losing them? 71% of millennials want a third party. There's a 12-year-old that says, I'm done. How do you see that?
Well, so what we're doing is a little different, because we end up, didn't you know we're a cult? The idea here is that when I see Movement for a People's Party, right? These are the guys that broke away from Bernie and tried to draft Bernie originally and then tried to do their own thing. And there was a coalition brewing of parties. Jill was at the Convergence Conference with us. We had Code Pink there. There was all these different groups that are third parties that are coming together to try to build this broad left coalition. Progressive Independent Party was trying to lead this charge. There was a bunch of different groups trying to pull together. Ultimately, even David Cobb was involved. We had Socialist Alternative that was involved, Calvin Priest, and it was a huge gathering of like-minded folks. And even then, infighting kind of started making things sort of separate, right? Egos started getting in the way, different opinions stuff. What we have found effective is talking to people about what matters to them, not the party, but them, and then showing how what we're offering meets that specific need. And so I think that the Green Party would be well advised. If I could be so bold, I think it would be well advised to show how you're going to meet those needs. So let me back up a bit. This is a good point. So, I talked about what we're for versus what we're against. And, we have two sides to this, right? The governing powers that be are governing. We're activists right now because we're not in power. We're not casting votes for stuff. We're activating, we're trying to do stuff. We can repel people with that, or we can attract people with that. And we need massive numbers, not tens of people. Tens of people don't get it done. In fact, sometimes I wonder if we don't hurt ourselves with the tens of people. The guy standing on the corner with John 3:16 by himself screaming, It's nice and it's effective in its own way, but I think that what we have experienced more than anything is that when we penetrate people in one-on-one conversations, and we penetrate people using analogies of our own lives, touching points about what matters to them today, I think that we have had tremendous success at flipping people, so to speak, and recruiting them in. And then once they're in, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of people that want to start their own thing. All of a sudden they get a little taste of what it's like, and they say, well, shit, I can do this. And they decide they're going to try and do their own thing. And it's like Joni loves Chachi every time. So keep on keeping on. But the reality is that, I hope I'm addressing the question you're asking. The hope comes from showing people that they have power, showing people that they can make change, and that it may be slow, but if you are focused on efficacy, not just getting your feels out there. And this is a huge deal, man. I can't stress to you enough. The joke is that I oftentimes am the ice dragon in Game of Thrones, just burning down the wall. And that's not always the most effective strategy on building coalitions. So learning a different way, you know, is sometimes a really important thing. And I like to pride myself that I am adaptable. And I like my organization because they give me feedback when I've crossed that line. They don't just let me go be all you can be, Steve. They say, hey dude, relax. So I think that for the Green Party in particular, can I be candid here for a minute? I am on camera, so that makes it even rougher.
Turn the camera on.
No, I don't mind my people here, but I want you all to hear this, okay? We spoke with David Cobb one-on-one, two-on-one over the phone, trying to penetrate his, whatever this is, and explain to him about the economic narrative that would empower the Green New Deal. That's what we care about. It's like focus number uno one. I don't care about anything. Get the damn Green New Deal done, okay? And we didn't say the words in a way that he could hear it. For whatever reason, he didn't hear it.
The Greens are a grassroots party. And if Mr. Cobb doesn't see that, then it's too bad.
Who is that? Who is that? I like that.
I think really though, there are probably 5 of us in this room who really know David, and most of the people who are Greens on the ground have no idea who he is.
So I don't want to get into it. I don't want to give him any more air cover than he needs. But the reality is that he's a guy that I like. I like him. He's a very affable guy. You want to hang out with him. He's a nice guy, right? This is not an indictment of him as a human being. I like him a lot. We just don't, we're blocked from each other now because we're oil and water. But the reality is that, you know, a lot of people were repelled by the Greens that wanted to be a Green. They just didn't know the language. They didn't speak the code. They didn't have all the, whatever, things that you do to be a Green that feel like a Green in proper standing. And I think that there was some otherness that prevented some of these people that would have probably been good Greens, they just had to grow into their greenness, got pushed away. And I don't want to say names because they're doing what they think is right. They're fighting their own fight. But I think that Greens would do well in understanding that you're selling a vision. You're selling a vision. It's not just greenness, but you're selling a vision. And when you sell that vision and you secure that vision and it touches them right here, that's how you build massive space to get with young girls like that. We want to go into these schools and give them coloring books and stuff to show them these stories. We want to talk to them about things that give hope. Yeah, and to me, like for real, we already started this. There's a book that we were going to write called MMT, is Genuine Hope. Because everything else, everything you hear about, it's like, we can't afford that. Jesus, God, Social Security's going bankrupt. We're going to run out of keystrokes. It's just absolutely infuriating that it's like a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Are you serious? You really think we ran out of keys? Well, the private, all right. Yes.
You mentioned 12 years to do what? And then what would real progressives do if the world was yours?
So that's a great question. So for me, I'm not a scientist, but I trust scientists. I trust the environmental groups that are out there that are fighting for climate change, that know different mitigation strategies and so forth. I realize that we have a better chance of fixing it structurally than we do making everyone quit smoking, so to speak. And this is the unfortunate truth. People are they're the last ones to change. You don't want to they're not going to stop watching television, for example, or whatever. So attacking it that way, I've found, we have vegans on our team that are very, very focused on getting rid of, animal cruelty and so forth. And this is a strategy that, obviously, getting rid of the mass cow production here would dramatically change our, ability to address climate change. However, the chances of people quitting eating meat in rapid succession within the time frame that we have, I slim to none. It's being fatalistic, but there are opportunities out there, different filtration systems, different means of flip, like for example, we would immediately massively deficit spend into the economy I often jokingly say retrofit every smokestack in the world. But the idea would be that we would literally change green energy yesterday. I don't care if I have to pay off whoever I have to pay off to get that done. My focus would be on fixing that problem, and then I'll worry about the other problems after that. We have to survive to worry about the next layer of problems. So from my perspective, the goal here is to identify the chief pollutants, the chief things. If we have to make somebody whole to make something happen, I would do it in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even flinch. We can fix the structural inequality after we survive as a species. And so these are like a step approach to how I would go about it. But I'm not here to tell you that I have the answers. What I'm here to tell you is that we need to approach it structurally with, like, for example, your CAN boards that you have over there, the way you guys move things across with the sticky tabs and so forth. There needs to be these kinds of plans put together for brainstorming. What are our solutions? We already have solutions out there. Which one will we go with? We're going to go with them all. We're going to go with a small subset. Differing minds would have differing opinions on the approach that we would take. But for example, deep water, desalinization, getting water into California, things like that, and being able to also use those hydroelectric powers. And there's so many different ways of approaching this. Solar highways, I mean, it sounds great. We could actually do that if we invested yesterday. We could radically change the sustainable model of cities. We could radically change the way we get energy distribution out there. There's just a lot of different things in my mind that we could do with retrofitting cars, providing high-speed rail, things that if we got our World War II level mobilization in action and really, really took the power of the purse and put it to use like that, we could solve a lot of things. And I think the rest of the world would follow suit largely because they would say, oh shit, they can do it, we can do it. That's my belief. Am I right? I don't know. I'd like to believe that I have something in there that's closer to right than wrong. But am I right? No, I mean, maybe I'm not. But I do believe that the power of the purse is key to any of the things that you would suggest. Any of you all would suggest. Because that ability to spend directly on the things that we need is what's missing right now. Because we've been limited by this fear of national debt. Oh my God, it's going to kill us. But what about hyperinflation? Forget you, man. Stop the lies. It's just all the debt fear porn and all these like financial lies that they tell to keep us begging for crumbs. To me, that's the first barrier to making the kinds of decisions within that 12-year window that I would take. I think of it like this. Building blocks. We're xenophobic in this country because we're afraid that people are taking stuff from us that we can't have. So naturally, there's all these different components of, I gotta keep mine, I gotta take care of me. You get out of your otherness, right? A federal job guarantee, if we put it towards green jobs or anything. I mean, there's so many ways, the possibilities are endless, but we've got to get on it now. And part of that is unshackling our minds from the financial constraints that we put on ourselves based on old Milton Friedman's logic. If we can get rid of Uncle Milty finally, we might have a chance of building a better tomorrow. That's really what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to pretend to be one. But that's my approach.
Is there a question back there? I have a question. I just kind of want to piggyback off
Sure.
Tom's question. My name is Andrew from Montgomery County. Thanks for speaking today.
Yeah, thank you.
So, piggybacking off that question, I would consider myself pretty naive when it comes to MMT. I just wanted to know what your take is, a very specific kind of question, regarding like incentivizing population control, not so like forbidding people from having family, that kind of thing, but like, is Real Progressives working on any kind of platform for suggesting any kind of legislation for incentivizing not having like 8 kids in a family, that kind of thing?
I think you see this accidentally already happening. Populations have slowly been shrinking anyway. I think that a lot of this stuff is funding healthcare. Like, for example, choice out there right now, people are making very different choices to begin with. And a lot of it is access to those choices. I think I'm going to answer your question in a sideways sort of fashion, see if you can draw the parallels. It's fashionable to say eat the rich. It's fashionable to focus on taxing the hell out of wealth, which is great, no problem here. We're not going to fight about that. But we are going to talk about order of operations, okay? When you're doing an algebra problem, you don't just start doing minuses and stuff like that. You have to do the stuff within the proper specs, right? And so back in the 70s, Milton Friedman made us all scared to death to spend on the people. So what he did was he pushed us to bank credit. So when times were really bad, we would go take bank loans out. When times were really good, we'd pay it back. And this is why we've stayed flatlined as people at the 99% forever. But the wealth in this nation's gone. So the intent, you'll see, hopefully anyway, that the parallel where I'm going with this is that to attack that wealth gap that goes like this, people instantly say, let's tax the hell out of the wealth. Well, you're not going to win that war. That war's not going to happen. But if you pay directly onto the people are no longer taking out loans to address these things that make that wealth gap go like this. So now you've cut their wealth off at the spigot, and you've addressed this problem without ever saying, I'm eating the rich. You literally are eating the rich because you're feeding the poor. So now all of a sudden that wealth gap, which was shot up by financializing our needs, by taking our suffering and making a profit on it, we've eliminated that by spending. So when I say, how will we deal with population control? When you give people a full life, when you take away unemployment and you take away destitution, people make very different choices when they're educated, when they have access to these things. They make different choices for themselves. They want to see the world. They want to do something different.
They don't want to have kids.
Maybe they don't want to have kids. That's the point. Look, I mean, let's be fair. If you don't have nothing going on and you're sitting there in a room and you know, it's like, man, let's go ahead and do something, right? And all of a sudden you've got more kids. I'm just, you give people things to do and they can have choices and not relegated to just poor man duty of making babies. Now all of a sudden they've got a different set of choices. I mean, this is, it's never the direct blunt force approach that attacks these problems, in my opinion, except for maybe with climate change. Climate change, we just got to straight up go after it. But when it comes to population growth, I really believe that, like, I'm in recovery, let's be honest. So for years, I led life a different way. Then all of a sudden, when I got sober, I changed everything. And suddenly I got 2 master's degrees, struggling from a doctorate. You know what I mean? Very different world. I was hopeless, and then I was hopeful. When you have a different perspective, because you have access to different choices, I think some of these things are self-healing. And I think we're already on that trajectory. And you've got a boomer population that's about ready to leave the workforce to begin with. We're going to have a massive glut of non-work, people that need to work. We need to fill the void. A huge brain dump is about to exit the working population. We don't talk about this much, but it's going to happen. Now what? How do we address all these seniors that are on Social Security and stuff, and people are going to be working, and all of a sudden, they're not going to be having babies. It's just little things are going to change dramatically. I think that some of these things that blunt force head on is not necessarily the way to attack it. Yeah, am I right? I don't know. I think so.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Thinking about that, is that the argument for the basic income, giving people a basic income?
So I'm not for basic income. Let me just say it up front. Not because I want people to have to work, but so back in, you got to know what a dollar is, right? A dollar is a tax credit. It's nothing more than a tax credit. The government agrees to accept $1 in exchange for tax, right? So by dumping money into society, just dumping it out there, what you've done is basically a school voucher. We don't like school voucher programs or private schools and stuff like that because it's really status quo. It's the exact same thing for a basic income because people aren't looking for cash. What they're looking for is, hey, I need shelter. I need food. And if you don't have a price anchor, which you don't with the UBI, you end up with disastrous stuff. You don't have an increase in productivity to meet demand. And now what you've got is a really, really screwed up situation. So what we've done is, because originally this should really scream to leftists and Marxists and everybody else along the way, You think about labor, and you think about labor having control of itself, right? You create a federal job guarantee, federally funded, locally administered. I think Jill talked about having, instead of an unemployment center everywhere, having an employment office in every community, right? I mean, this is a nice idea, right? So imagine, you know, part of the Young Greens came out with this local communities thing. I think it was Amendment 835 or something like that, if I'm not screwing this up. But Section 830, I don't know, something like that. But it was about local communities and local economies and so forth. A job guarantee facilitates that transfer to allow local communities to decide what they want people to do. And so, in my mind, the way I see this is expand your existing Social Security now to accommodate maybe an age drop, maybe, you know, it's already handling disability, maybe expand what that means, maybe provide. But then, caregivers are the most untended to people. And why are we not compensating that as, you know, compensate as public purpose work? It benefits the society. Why not translate? Every time I look and I see my kids' school, and this is going to probably make me cry, so forgive me up front. I remember going to band every week, every day. I remember going to chorus every day. I remember going to art class every day. Now we have to look on the calendar for every third Thursday. I mean, what the hell is that? That's because we have literally sunk in the race to the bottom. That's why economics matters. And so when you think about this basic income, and also people are addressing a problem that's not there. You go through any area in Pennsylvania, and I guarantee you right now, you tell me it's a pristine paradise, and I'm telling you you're a liar. And we have so much work that is left undone because we say we can't afford it. Where are we going to get the money to do it? Okay? And, you know, I advocate, just to pull back, I'm going to expand your question a little bit, forgive me here, but I believe governors need to band together. I believe the governors need to fight to get rid of all unfunded mandates at the federal level. Force the federal government to spend money into the states, because, you know, there's no reason the state pension plan should bankrupt the country. Bottom line is it's bullshit, but states are constrained. They are constrained. Pennsylvania is constrained. The only way to offset that is either go crazy Rick Perry style, cutting the bottom out of everything, bringing business here, which destroys you just as bad, extracts wealth, extracts resources, etc., for a song, for a bowl of soup, okay? Or the federal government directly spends. So I said in the very beginning, I talked a little bit about the Eurozone for just a second. I touched on it. I tried not to go too far. But Germany controls Europe because Germany is a net exporter. They're the bully of the bunch. Greece is a net importer. They're at the mercy of the Troika. They have no ability to offset any spending issues. This is the difference between the currency issuer and currency user environment, which the ECB holds with an iron fist run by Germany, okay? When you get out of this mindset, you look at the United States, it's the same thing. The federal government is the one that has the power of the purse, not the states. The states can only spend what they tax, or if they have bonds, or they have other investments. Look at Puerto Rico. We should be down there fixing that yesterday, right? So this basic income stuff is much ado about nothing. It's really a neoliberal wet dream to eliminate Roosevelt's New Deal. And we're fighting for a Green New Deal. So why in God's name would we facilitate its demise before it gets started? So that to me, the UBI is a Trojan horse of the enemy. It's not our friend. It's a means of devaluing labor, which flies directly in the face of anything Marx would do. And I mean, I could go on for hours, literally. so I'm, wait, who? Yes, you, sir.
How do you balance policy deal breakers? So, you know, like racism, equality, LGBTQ equality, reproductive rights, the list goes on, right? Like banning fracking, environmental things. Like, how do you balance that there are so many deal breakers with like building coalitions and movements, and like the more deal breakers that you consider, you know, that are really important to all of us, the less people that can like fall in, like, you know, like maybe you just eliminate a bunch of Catholics, right, or something like that.
It's a horrible situation, and you're right, because what happens is you whittle down your 99 to 1%. All of a sudden, it becomes inverted. You've narrowed your scope of people that are willing to sign on to 1%, because you've eliminated, because there's so many deal breakers. And this is the real problem, and this is why we don't see a lot of things get done. We need to start pulling back up here before we ever allow, like, have you ever seen people, like, I saw people pushing Jesse the Body Ventura for president. And I'm like, what are you thinking? The guy's a libertarian, just as an example. And they're like, well, what do you mean he's against war? I'm like, so is Ron Paul, but I don't want him marshaling the poor to friggin' clean up the dead bodies in Galveston. You know, I'm down with FEMA, you know? I mean, what the heck? So I think that it starts with changing the narrative before you even get there. Like, this is what we're doing. This is my goal, right? I don't know what anybody else's goal is. We got to get to the point where you're thinking through a different lens to begin with, so you're not putting forward this stuff. Because people are herd animals to a large extent. I mean, you've got this hardy band of people that are really, really in the know, and they really care, and they read vociferously, and they're, no, this is really important. So it's about framing, right? It's about framing, and you can't have equality with justice without addressing those things. You can't have peace with justice without addressing those things. So I think ultimately it's the do no harm mindset is really important here, but I think it really does come down to the fact that you've got to frame your bills to where you're not starting from a point of having those poison pills in there, right? I watch the Democrats do this all the time. It's neoliberalism on steroids. It's the balkanization. It's intentional by dividing us and so forth into these little boxes of, you know, hate groups almost. I mean, you make it so that we can't see past it. So I elevate up to a macro versus the micro. And I say to myself, if we have a job guarantee for everyone, right? Job guarantee for all. Local communities can dictate what happens. I have eliminated largely well, we're only going to do it for people with 110,000 that are this shade of brown and that are on this spectrum of gender. If I keep it up here and I make it that, if you know what I'm saying, that's my approach to policy, is that the more specific you try to make something, the less likely it is to pass. Because now all of a sudden you've got the people that feel that, think about this, go into rural white America. These people are spitballing with about 4 teeth in their mouth right now because there's no dental care, there's no health care. I'm not joking. They're driving 50 miles to go see just a freaking general practitioner.
You're right.
And they don't even have a car. I mean, they're walk-ins and they're hitchhiking. I mean, their life is rough. It's no wonder they voted for Trump, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Trump is the answer. I'm saying it's not just all about racism. They're looking at their life and they're saying, geez, my life sucks. And so we get into this position where we overemphasize some of these, and they're all real, but the solution is up higher. And that's why I focus on the economic narrative so much, because I believe that economics is why these false scarcity narratives exist. For example, take something as important as reparations. Talk to a libertarian, let's say throw them a couple bucks and tell them to shut up and move on. Just here's money, go. We know it's structural. We know that the problems that have happened in the African American community are pernicious and deep. I mean, so many cuts, so many different things have happened over time to create this inequality. So if you believe that the nation's broke, you start from that perspective, and now you've got to tax these people to afford to pay for these people, you already started with a fight. You already started with hatred. You already started with picking winners and losers and all the things you've heard for the years. If you start from a standpoint of, here's what we're going to do at a macro level. We're going to raise all ships, and we're going to do this. I believe that by extension, you give the fertile ground to be able to have those productive conversations. Imagine that guy that voted for Trump that has a cavity in his mouth, an abscess that's keeping him up all night, raging and upset and angry, and seeing this caravan of people coming up from the south. And he's saying, son of a bitch is going to take my dental care. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Imagine giving him dental care, how different his perspective is going to be when he hears about people that don't have dental care. When he doesn't believe that it's his hard-earned tax dollar paying for these people. When you change that narrative altogether, I believe that that's the trade-off. You get rid of the trade-off. You make the trade-off obsolete, less so. And that's, I know this sounds like a long way around to what you're asking, but I promise you I've thought about this at great length. I really do believe it's the economic narrative, the false scarcity narrative, that makes us hate each other, that creates hopelessness, that creates so many of these situations. That's my take. I could be wrong, but I don't believe I am.
2 more questions.
Sure, okay. Yes.
So I actually have a coalition comment. Just I heard an organizer once say that if you're in a coalition and you don't feel uncomfortable, then it's not a coalition. Which I've always carried in the back of my mind. But I wanted to say a little bit to the, so I was one of the people who was advocating for Green Party of Pennsylvania hitching its wagon a little bit to modern monetary theory and federal job guarantee. And one of the reasons for that was that I believe in bottom-up change, and we understand that that at the national level, the Green Party could really benefit, or in my view, the National Green Party could really benefit from an explicit endorsement of that movement in a lot of ways. For one reason, because there are a lot of people who have heard of it, thanks in part to the work of our friend Steve here. And but the second, one of the reasons I believe so much in that change, that the potential for that transformation, is I'm a Quaker. And a lot of people remember Quakers, especially here in Pennsylvania, as being instrumental on the Underground Railroad, yes, helping people escape from slavery and travel into, sort of up, away from that, secretly passing folks on. A lot of people do not recognize that individual Quakers don't have a top-down governance structure. And so there was no organization that could say, hey, we're Quakers and we believe in that God of every person, and therefore obviously that means slavery is wrong. And in fact, that was not true. And in the early part of this country's history, there were tons of slaveholding Quakers. And there was a guy who named John Woolman, who got on his horse and went around and visited every Friends meeting that he could make it to throughout New England, Pennsylvania, and moving towards sort of all of this area, visiting them one by one to stand up in them and tell them, folks, this is wrong, does not square with our beliefs, and please, I'm asking you as friends, as Quakers, to establish that as a fundamental belief. That says that in order to, if you're a friend, you may not own another human being as property. And he was, going into rooms not much bigger than this, speaking to groups not much bigger than this, and helped transform his own community into one that people now remember as having been at the forefront of abolition. So those are some of the examples that give me hope and gratitude for people who are doing the work that you're doing today.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate that story. One more question? Yes.
Since you've been doing this quite a while, what sources of news do you find credible?
So there's a bit of a hierarchy to how I view the news. Okay. I check on Dr. Kelton. I try to see what she has to say on things, because I have to read every bit of news. But I've gotten to the point now where I can read any newspaper and filter out almost instantly bullshit. Mm-hmm. And so I don't really flinch quite as much as I once did, Mm-hmm. I realize that alternative news has become as bad a pariah as mainstream news. I watched them push the Corbett report. I watched them push all kinds of stupid stuff with Alex Jones. I watched them push all kinds of nonsense across the board. And I'm like, God, man, I find it easier to read mainstream news sometimes because this hyperbolic nonsense is misleading people every bit as bad. And in fact, in some ways worse, because, you know, the reason why we don't like the Democrats, so to speak, is because they tell us they want these things, but then they undercut us, right? Reason why I don't like a lot of my alternative media friends, and I'm not going to mention names, but I'd love to, is because they sit there and they take you right to the edge of right, and then they screw you up with some nonsense. And it's that nonsense that I spend my life defeating. And it's just it's such a mind screw because it makes so much sense, but it's wrong, flat wrong. And so for me, you know, I tend to read when it comes to economics in particular. William Mitchell, who's out of Australia, is called Billy Blog. He writes deep, long, really intense writings. I follow Stephanie Kelton, of course. I follow Warren Mosler. I follow the Modern Money Network and Global Institute of Sustainable Prosperity. There's a host of folks out there that I'm really dialed into reading, and I'm getting into a deeper layer with these legal scholars through you know, the Modern Money Network and Bob Hockett of Cornell University, Cornell Law. There's a host of people that I'm really following to see what matters to them. And if it matters to them, it matters to me because they're way, I mean, like I'm so close to touching that next layer. You know what I mean? I've got like that one wall between me, there is a gatekeeper there still. But I'm there, I'm right there, touch, you know? And so I follow what they're doing. Here's a really important answer to your question, even though it's not the answer. I went to this summit on a couple Fridays ago in DC called Economists for Peace and Security. And I went there and Jamie Galbraith, John Kenneth Galbraith's son, was there. He's one of the more quiet members of the MMT community, but he's definitely one of them. There's Bob Hockett there, there was Marshall Steinbaum of Roosevelt Institute. There's groups out there that I follow, but I know where to draw the line. And listening to these economists, there's a lady named Eileen Applebaum that I listened to, who spoke incredibly deeply about this fissuring of businesses. Like you're sitting there in a business and 8 people work for 8 different companies that are sitting in the same room. The company doesn't own any employees anymore. It's all outsourced. So I follow people like that. You know what I mean? And when they're wrong, I've done the homework, so I have a little different perspective on things now. I can kind of push the bullshit aside and still read for the meat. But, you know, I really do focus largely on, you know, I will read the New York Times, even though it's bullshit. A lot of times I'll read the Financial Times.
You have to know which way the herd goes.
Right. You have to know, because that's the only way you're going to know how to counter the next move. You'll see, like if you follow any of my live streams and stuff like that, like last night I spoke a little bit about Bezos, you know, because I want people to understand what the real scenario is. It's not just that Bezos is bilking taxpayers in these cities, it's that he's creating a race to the bottom, okay? And other cities are now going to try to compete to cut things to bring business their way. And then this brings this spiral and really, really impacts all of our lives. So,
do you have an opinion on Richard Wolff?
Richard Wolff, I do have an opinion on him. I like him as a human being. I like his sensibilities about various things like co-ops and things like that. But from people very close to Richard, I know that he knows the truth about MMT. And I see truth like it's some, you know, holy, you know, whatever. That's not what I'm saying. He understands money creation. He understands the process. And yet, when you've written 40 years of writings that contradict it, it's kind of hard to say, I'll issue a retraction for 40 years worth of work, okay? So Richard stays in Richard's lane. There's Mark Blythe, another really, really great guy. But Mark is adjacent, he's not there yet. You've got other people like that, that's why I see people, Robert Reich, take him for, he's a perfect example. He's that guy that's dangerously close. You really want to like. You read him, oh, Robert, oh, yeah, I like you, Robert. Then all of a sudden he goes, he's going to bankrupt the nation. Okay, I'm done with you. You're a liar.
Last year he came on and said, don't vote green.
Yeah, but my point is that you hear these people and they say things that are so close and then all of a sudden they get you with the hook. Don't vote green. Or he's going to bankrupt the nation. I look for things to see who my enemies and allies are, right? And I read them very differently. So my news reading is very different than the average person's. I like to find out, oh, wait a minute, there's a journalist that's kind of getting it. I hear them talking about deficits all of a sudden. They're not afraid of deficits anymore. I wonder what that's all about. Who's in their ear? And I start picking up the phone. You talked to this person recently? There is a publication called Splinter, okay? And Raul Carrilla of the Modern Money Network and Jesse Meyerson wrote this great article called The Dangerous Myth of the Taxpayer Dollar. Now you'll see me out there serpent-like fighting when people talk about the taxpayer dollar, because it's a racist, xenophobic trope that we use. What do you think about when you think about what a taxpayer looks like? Seriously, white, aristocracy, cane, type, taxpayer, right? It's not by accident. This has been used to great precision because everybody wants to be a taxpayer. Naturally, everybody wants to be the elite, right? So if you acknowledge that a taxpayer is this racist trope, then what do you do? Now what do you do, right? And so, first of all, it's wrong because taxes get deleted. Sorry. But the other thing is that it creates that classism once again. It eliminates cognition. You stop. It's like a patriotism almost. It's just as bad. And yet we can't shake it from our vernacular. It's just there. It just rolls off the tongue. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of publications. If you look me up online, I'll be happy to talk to you about more. And I'm at Real Progressives on Facebook. We have a website called Real Progressives USA. Don't go there right now. I mean, we'll see. We're in the process of re-upping it to realprogressives.org. I'm not real proud of our website now, but there are good articles. We have really good writers, and occasionally we hit on a nice one. But we're going to get better and better and better. And one final thing, I guess, is that we're in the process of creating a 501c3 and a 501c4. I've been really restricted in how I can actually help candidates because of trying to get that nonprofit status to do the kinds of cool shit that we want to do in communities, to hatch things out with other academic institutions and go for grant money and do the things that will really prove these concepts out. You need to be that 501c3. To be able to do the activism and actions that we really want to do, you need funding, and you got to be a 501c4 or a 527. So there's all these different legal components that are going on behind the scenes. And anyway, Tim, thank you so much, and thank you very much, and thank you all very much.